fast beginning image revolutions of our days, which I've shown in the beginning, also the ubiquitous images which are everywhere. So I think these are two emancipative strategies of media artists try today. Is now on us to bring those really into the discourse of our societies via the established institutions we have there, and also via new strategies for preservation and documentation for the humanities need in the 21st century. So unfortunately, I cannot really answer your question since I don't know this artwork you mentioned. But I hope this was still a little bit of an answer. So there are. Maybe you? Or somebody maybe wants to.
Towards the end of your talk, you talked about the problems of documenting media art and the continuation of that, and you gave some examples of some projects. My question is, it is a problem, you know, institutes are funded for a number of years and then they lose their funding and then that media is lost. And then I keep thinking, well, Wikipedia is open source, well not open source, but it's open in the open domain. And you did mention the Virtual Arts Museum that is a project that you've initiated. Is that run in a similar sort of way, so that if you lost your funding tomorrow, would it still endure?
Yeah, this whole situation is a disaster. I mean, as you pointed it out. And the traditional art institutions, they develop long-term existing archives. Basically, in Germany at least, there's a concerted strategy cover the whole field, talking about traditional art forms. And then they had the idea, the research institutions and the funders in the 90s, okay, there's this new media art, we need to come up with, this would probably require some new forms of documentation and some new, a lot of research around preservation, of course. And they at least realized that. But then they made the mistake that they only supported in projects, so like in short terms, like 2 years here, 3 years there, and so that people get jobless, and then the project disappeared from the web, and there's no plan behind that. And so that's what I'm insisting, that we need this concerted action towards media art documentation. At least I'm just talking about documentation, not about preservation. It's a big field, of course, but this would be the next step then. And since you asked related to virtual art, this exists still, but it was one of these projects which have only a few people working there, and there are some students, and so. But since it's based at a university, it will continue. But it's not a project based. There's a long time support for that, fortunately, but. But this is a tiny project compared to what we need. So there were other. I think there was also a question here from Erke.
Yes, hi. So not a question, but I would just like to get back to that provocative first question that you partly missed what he was saying. So he was basically saying that how do these media art projects dealing with virtuality differ from commercial project like the Universal City Walk in Los Angeles, so which has just as capitalist commercial motivations. And I think that is a good point to make, you know. And I gave an answer a long time ago in this sort of like one of the early I don't know, sort of like foundational studies in interactive media art by launching the notion meta-commentary, so that what these artists are actually doing are certain kind of meta-commentaries on these commercial or sort of like uses of these technologies, that there's a certain kind of a dialogical relationship, and I think that there's one of the points I made, for example, is that I don't see many media artists, like, for example, interested in this certain kind of maximal effect or the sort of like unlimited flight through cyberspace, which is actually the Universal Studios sort of like approach, sort of like just taking those effects to an extreme. You could also maybe compare that with special effects industry and that kind of things. And I personally feel this is a huge generalization, but that that definitely the points of those media artists that I'm interested in, so is somewhere completely, totally different. Let's say Raphael Lozano Hemmer's huge projects in large outdoor spaces. I think it's a good example. I mean, that Rafa uses sort of like extreme high technology, like in some of his pieces with like 20 state-of-the-art motorized, computer-controlled light beams on the skies. But basically, so that I would say that at least as an attempt, that Rafa very intelligently and intellectually sort of like creates a kind of a meta-commentary, which also always raises this historical dimension, social, cultural, political dimensions of those technologies. So it may, in some sense, sort of like remind you of the ways how, like in the Second World War, the same technology was used for search and destroy of bombers in the skies, or the Hollywood openings, with those waving searchlights. But I would say that the point of Rafa's work is really elsewhere, and I think that this notion meta-commentary still, it is an important one, and we should always keep it in mind, because we need certain kind of like aesthetic reality checks, when we deal with high technology. And like Jeffrey is a good example. I mean, that Jeffrey's work is much as you showed Jeffrey's short work. There are a few cases where Jeffrey's works are basically not artworks on its own term, but he makes applications for even some Australian tourist agency or something like that. And then we have to ask this question: where is the line? Is there a line where something which is a critical meta-commentary on this technology actually turns into or slips into a kind of an application for promotion of tourism?
Yeah, I don't have to add a lot to that. I mean, this is very evident, and I agree completely with my esteemed colleague. Are there any more questions? Or if not, I also would like to add one more thing, not towards that, it was very good. But so how can we proceed from here, from this bit difficult position where we are at the moment in terms of development new tools? So there's, at the moment, there's a white paper prepared, which will be presented at the Refresh, at the next Media Art History Conference in Liverpool. And this should be only a 2-pager, so there's a team of colleagues doing that. And we want to publish that then and to bring it into the community, and it will be on 2 pages. It will be discussed, will be outline the whole problem, and we'll make some proposals on how we can go ahead and how we can solve this situation, how we can make that better. And we hope that many institutions and colleagues will support that. But this will be, you will see it coming over the mailing list just in a few weeks. There was one more question over there. Maybe. Oh, sorry.
Can I make a plea that you actually, it's not just documentation you need here, but almost instructions. I noticed a little bit there you had bioart, genetic art as one of your categories. Well, we can't possibly preserve those works, but you need really to not just document them, but to preserve almost the instructions to recreate them. And so for a lot of the new media works, you need to preserve the code as much as document the actual event, so that in theory somebody could reconstruct them in the future, because those objects will never exist again.
Agree.
I have a question if there's communication between the traditional arts and the media arts, because you said that there's already funding and there are systems in place. And I'm wondering if there's an artificial separation, probably from the part of the established media, that see this seizure between traditional art and modern art, while if I look at imaginary spaces, I see them as well in Hieronymus Bosch gardens, or I see them on Greek vases. So I think there's actually, if you look at the big picture, there's a continuity of imaginary spaces, and I don't see if the traditional arts would see this combination, if it would be possible to use some of the existing structures and some of the existing funding mechanisms to also create these kind of archives. Because I think there's a big prejudice against media art, and if that could be overcome, maybe the funding could become more fluent or easier or more consistent. What do you think?
I agree partly with what you said, that we have, and I've also tried to show a number of examples, that we have in media art some continuation of art historical themes, and that's why we also try to bring together these two databases of the graphic print collection and database of virtual art, and that media art sometimes much better connects with previous centuries and so on than the art of the last century, for example. And on the other hand, media art deals with all these very complex issues like genetic revolution and globalization and whatever, all the craziness of our human self nowadays, like traditional art forms from the last century. So it's a very strange situation, and it seems that the art market and the art established world of biennales and museums, and this is very well discussed in Edward Schenken's articles around this topic, and also in the discussion he initiated with Peter Weibel and Boriot, who's an exponent of traditional artwork, I would say, in Basel, at a big art fair. And so there is a strange separation between these two worlds, and people in the media art sector during the last years even spoke about a ghettoization of media art, and well, I would say it's just irresponsible to exclude that. And so I remember when I was 20 years ago in Hamburg in the Kunsthalle, and we were working there as a student. They were already aware that there is media, but they were afraid of putting these installations into their storage, since they have to deal with something they had no they were not had no education. They were not educated to deal with it, and they didn't see the need. And the museum directors then, of course, and also maybe even 10 years ago, they didn't even use email, and so it's a big step which will now the museum world has to do now. But it's already too late for many artworks. And as you said, the funding is not good. The funding is miserable. The funding is only project based, and there is no, as I said, no concerted strategy, and there is no sustainable funding like in the natural sciences. And what we need is an international collaboration between so many countries who would like to fit in collaborative tools like in astronomy, where we share all the same data, and we're not here as a little project for 2 years, and there another project for 1 year, and there another project for 3 years. We need to keep them alive and bring them together, and not only via metadatabases, since we need the archives. Then the metadatabase makes no sense if the archive itself does not exist anymore. So we need, that's what we need. Yeah.